When it comes to dealing with difficult emotions, we usually respond in ways that are very familiar, but not necessarily helpful. More often than not, our gut instinct is to cut off a difficult feeling the second we begin to feel it. We try to reject challenging emotions in all kinds of ways. Sometimes we try to dull them by eating, smoking, or drinking something. There's the other extreme where we indulge or wallow in our pain so much that it becomes a huge part of how we identify ourselves. And more often than not, we get so caught up in trying to blame someone or something for how we're feeling that we end up prolonging our suffering and making it worse, instead of making it better. It's as if we spend a lot of time wondering who shot an arrow into our chest, rather than just pulling it out. Sometimes we even deal with pain by just pretending it doesn't exist. Complete avoidance. We put our headphones on and turn the volume up. We watch television or make a phone call, raid the refrigerator or flip through a magazine, or go shopping when we don't really need to. Anything will do just so long as we don't have to sit with that momentary edge, that temporary discomfort. None of our usual approaches work in the long term, yet we engage in them over and over again in the hopes that they will. What we usually experience as pain is really a combination of thoughts and physical sensations. Our mind latches on to a particular way of viewing a situation, and then our body joins in with some kind of uncomfortable feeling, like shaky hands, butterflies in the stomach, a bouncing leg, a heaviness in the chest, clenched teeth, or shallow breathing. Since the thoughts in our heads and the bodily sensations we experience feel so substantial, we take them very seriously, and they threaten our sense of well-being as a result. There's this sense that we're always going to feel this bad, that we'll never again feel happy or content or at peace. There's something about negative emotions that feels so permanent. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, even our emotional states. We can see this in nature as the seasons change and ocean waves change form from one second to the next. Our emotional life is fluid and always changing as well. When we're in a dark and painful place, however, it's really hard to remember that. We've all heard of people who take their own lives because their pain was so intense they probably thought they'd never feel better. Their hopelessness prevented them from realizing how eventually their situation would change. Those moments that bring about the most pain are really learning opportunities, if only we give them the chance to be. When we feel something that we label as really difficult or negative, it means that there's a tremendous potential for growth staring us in the face, if only we have the courage to look it in the eye rather than run away. While we can't completely eliminate all of the difficult emotions in our lives, we can make them much more manageable. The way to do this is to just experience those emotions directly instead of making them worse by avoiding them or attaching to them. Everything gets more workable when we connect to our pain by simply experiencing its unique qualities. Doing this over time helps us create more space and breathing room in our minds, and the degree of our suffering gradually decreases. By connecting to the pain, I mean simply allowing ourselves to feel it completely, to face it straight on. It means getting really up close and personal with it, what it feels like in the body, and what kinds of thoughts and fantasies get attached to it. We all have a highly unique way of experiencing pain, and the more familiar we get with our individual process, the more space we create in our minds. When we have more space in our minds, everything feels more workable. I like to compare it to the way uninvited house guests aren't as bothersome in a mansion as they would be in a studio apartment. Our minds kind of work the same way. Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh likens the process I'm talking about to holding your pain the way a loving mother holds her child. He encourages us to give our utmost compassionate attention to those difficult emotions the way that the sun nourishes a flower with its light. In return, the flower faces the sun and opens up. What happens in nature happens in us. We often look at pain as an obstacle to our spiritual life, and we forget that it's one of the best vehicles to help us reach some level of balance and equanimity. Practicing with pain and discomfort is really one of the most useful things we can do. So you can begin to manage the degree of suffering in your life in some very practical ways. The trick is to really allow yourself to feel the feelings rather than run away from them. It's always easiest to start small so that you don't feel overwhelmed. Remember this at those times when you experience a minor irritation, a small fear, a low-grade depression. The next time something happens that you experience as difficult or painful, simply notice everything going on in your body and in your mind. Sit still long enough to get clear on what kinds of physical reactions you're having to whatever just took place, to whatever thought or experience you had that's troubling you. Now, this isn't about playing a story over and over again in your head. Remember, we're not trying to blame or justify or explain anything away. Again, we want to pull the arrow out of our chest and not obsess over where it came from. Instead, just sit for a few moments, breathe consciously in and out, and give your emotions the curiosity and attentiveness they deserve. Hold those difficult feelings with the same gentleness, compassion, and attention that you would offer a baby in your arms. There's no need to fix or change anything, or to feel things any more or less. Just notice it all completely and thoroughly and sit with it for as long as you're comfortable doing so, breathing mindfully and using the breath as a focal point. Get in touch with what your body feels like as you do this. Notice if there's any tightness or tension happening anywhere. Notice if your breathing is rapid or labored, or if it's calm and steady. Really feel it all in your body, but don't let it take you over, and don't try to run from it either. Try breathing in and out with your abdomen instead of your chest so you can take fuller breaths, as infants do so naturally. And as you do this, visualize yourself creating some room in your head and your heart to handle those painful emotions in a new way, a way that doesn't encourage them to fester. Do all of this with a patience and a sense of humor towards yourself. It's really important. And I should also mention here that what I'm talking about shouldn't be confused with chronic depression or other serious emotional or psychological conditions that could best be treated through therapy and medication. Sometimes that's perfectly called for. This process can take a few minutes or up to an hour. It really depends on what you're comfortable with. It needn't feel like a chore or a battle, and over time and with practice you'll be able to do it for longer periods. But the more you do it, the more it becomes a natural response to handling stress in the future. Bad habits and good habits alike are formed by repetition and regularity. One of the most useful things we can do to help us manage the pain in our lives is to meditate on a regular basis. It doesn't matter how long you do this at first, but consistency will bring about the best results. Try to set aside at least a few minutes a day, preferably at the same time each day, to be still and quiet and pay attention to yourself, your breathing, and your body. Give yourself some time every day to begin the process of taming your mind so that you're no longer beholden to the thoughts that it's constantly secreting. It's best to receive instruction from someone at some point, but you can absolutely begin to practice on your own right now. Healing yourself this way will take some time, but gradually you'll really begin to see a difference when you learn to embrace your difficult emotions rather than repress them. Everything is manageable in life, and everything you feel can be your best teacher rather than your worst enemy. It just takes a slight shift of your awareness and attention. I'm Lawrence Greco, and I'm a life coach in New York City. If you'd like more information about my services, please check out my website at www.zenlifecoach.com.